So we kind of wanted to sum up the event and think about how the creative sector supports innovation in the Southwest. And really today we couldn't have given a better example of the range of truly talented, insightful, creative, innovative and really inspiring organisations here today. Just what a range of work is going on in the creative industries all across the Southwest. So I just really wanted to start by saying an enormous thank you to all of our speakers who've given up their time so freely today and informed us on such amazing things. I mean, the thought of 3D scanning and scanning ears has quite frankly blown my mind. But there's been such an interesting range of projects from kind of dementia care to innovation vouchers that's been really inspiring. So a really big thank you to all of our speakers who've taken part today. As a cultural organisation, am I on time? Yes, I'm going to stop. Hold on one moment. There we go. So as a cultural organisation, we've certainly, over the last 5 years, felt ourselves grow. Our programmes increased, we've increased our sort of staff opportunities, our audiences have grown, and certainly our local partnerships have grown. And I don't think we're sort of on our own with this. And when you look into the statistics of the creative industries across the Southwest and nationally, it really is quite staggering. And Richard sent me across some figures yesterday, and they make for really, really interesting reading. The creative economy actually accounted for 2.55 million jobs in 2012. So that's 1 out of every 12 jobs in the UK, which is just phenomenal. The gross value added of the creative industries was a staggering 74.1 billion in 2012 and accounted for 5.2% of the UK economy. And the value of services exported by the UK creative industries was 15.5 billion in 2011. So what does this tell us about the creative industries and the creative sector? Well, I think it tells us that it has huge employment potential, that it's one of the UK's fastest growing economies, that it's a growing international export, and that it's resilient in a climate of global recession. And in fact, 3/4 of Europe's total creative industries turnover is generated by the 5 largest EU members, which are the UK, Germany, France, Italy, and Spain. So what about the Southwest? What's the Southwest contributing to that national picture? Well, putting this event together gave us a real chance to think about some of the phenomenal collaborations and joining together that's going across the Southwest. And there were some really interesting people that we looked at that, we just couldn't get involved today or couldn't participate, but some amazing things going on, something Theatre Delicatessen, which takes place in Bristol and also nationally, who work with private companies and collaborators as partners, and they use disused town spaces and take them over for events and productions. A company called Sudana, who are a South Asian dance company, who are working with surgeons, so they're working in healthcare settings, and they're looking at the way in which South Asian dance and surgery join together. So they're looking at the stitching, the handwork, they're working with tailors and craftspeople. And a really interesting project called Jamie's Farm, which works in an education setting and also works with therapy and young people. So some really dynamic, today's given us a marvellous flavour of just what dynamic collaborations are going on all across the Southwest. As a region, the Southwest has a pretty unique makeup. It's the largest geographic region in England, covering some 18% of its land area and extending 350 kilometres from north to southwestern tip. Growth in terms of population in the Southwest is growing faster than any other region over the last 20 years. We're projected to grow by an extra 470,000 by 2016 and another 350,000 by 2026. So there's going to be lots more people around in the Southwest to collaborate with. The Southwest has the lowest population density of any English region, and 56% of people live in rural districts here. So looking at sort of how the Southwest impacts on the creative and cultural industries, There are some 24,615 businesses operating in cultural domains in the Southwest, employing 168,000, very precise, I'm not sure this is probably wrong by now, but employing some 168,145 people, with an annual turnover of 10.8 billion. The most dynamic areas or economies identified in the Southwest in terms of creative and cultural industries are Bristol, Bath, North Somerset, Gloucestershire, Wiltshire and Dorset. And hopefully soon they'll include South Somerset and Somerset in that equation. I'm still on time for some reason. So yeah, I mean, what I think that says is that the creative industries are growing rapidly and the Southwest really has a lot to boast about in terms of what we're contributing to that national picture. So that got me thinking, which we've touched upon a lot today and people have drawn upon, how can we as individuals or as collectives foster this innovation and collaboration within our own organisations and communities? And Ray mentioned at the start about how we define innovation, what innovation means. And often when you think of innovation, you think of a seed or a spark or something small. And I think when I was thinking about innovation, I was thinking about it as a changing state, so something that may start quite small or conceptual and might grow into something quite dynamic and potentially life-changing. So that started me thinking about what exactly does innovation need to grow? The first thing that innovation needs to grow, I think, is space. And that's been clear in lots of the presentations today, that it's not just a physical space, it's not a desk or an office or a building, it's a mental space, it's a virtual space, it's a space where people come together, it's a space that takes us outside of those conventional workplaces and brings us into communities, spaces where we can think better. And we can link with anyone, not just the person on the desk opposite us, but anyone globally. So space was the first one. The second thing that I thought innovation needed, which again Jane touched upon and Ray, was openness. The capacity to look beyond the everyday and think about things a little differently, and often that happens when we come into contact with other people. And that doesn't mean being a high-level philosopher or thinker. I think sometimes that just means the capacity to stand back and be willing to explore someone else's perspective. And I found a really lovely quote from Douglas Adams, which I thought I'd share with you, which I think really highlights everyone's capacity to think differently about the world. And the quote says that the fact that we live at the bottom of a deep gravity well, on the surface of a gas-covered planet, going around a nuclear fireball 90 million miles away, and think this to be normal, is obviously some indication of how skewed our perspective tends to be. And I just thought that was a really nice quote, highlighting how you can look at the everyday very differently. So being innovative can be frightening. It involves knocking down the things that make us secure and looking beyond known entities. Innovation needs open minds and the ability to adapt. Innovation also desperately needs ideas, creativity and belief. It needs people who follow ideas, persuade others and inspire passion. And I think we've had plenty of those people in this room today, so thank you very much. And the final thing that I thought innovation needs is collaboration. I think one of the most exciting things about today's speakers has been seeing what can happen when we come together, and not just when we come together with someone else where we know what we want from them, but when we come together with someone else and the unusual happens, the strange appears, the thing we weren't expecting to come into contact with. And I think that's been a really exciting thing about lots of the talks today, that it wasn't necessarily things people were planning to do, but things that just emerged from brilliant people meeting together. So I wanted to leave you with a final video. I'm not sure if you're aware of the RSA Animates programme, but there's a brilliant programme by John Stevens called Where Good Ideas Come From, and I'll just try and find it now.
For the past 5 years, I've been investigating this question of where good ideas come from. It's the kind of problem I think all of us are intrinsically interested in. We want to be more creative, we want to come up with better ideas, we want our organizations to be more innovative. I've looked at this problem from an environmental perspective. What are the spaces that have historically led to unusual rates of creativity and innovation? And what I've found in all of these systems, there are these recurring patterns that you see again and again that are crucial to creating environments that are unusually innovative. One pattern I call the slow hunch, that breakthrough ideas almost never come in a moment of great insight, in a sudden stroke of inspiration. Most important ideas take a long time to evolve, and they spend a long time dormant in the background. It isn't until the idea has had 2 or 3 years, sometimes 10 or 20 years to mature, that it suddenly becomes accessible to you and useful to you in a certain way. And this is partially because good ideas normally come from the collision between smaller hunches, so that they form something bigger than themselves. So you see a lot in the history of innovation, cases of someone who has half of an idea. There's a great story about the invention of the World Wide Web in Tim Berners-Lee. This is a project that Berners-Lee worked on for 10 years. But when he started, he didn't have a full vision for this new medium he was going to invent. He started working on one project as a side project to help him organize his own data. He scrapped that after a couple years, and he started working on another thing. And only after about 10 years did the full vision of the World Wide Web come into being. That is, more often than not, how ideas happen. They need time to incubate, and they spend a lot of time in this partial hunch form. The other thing that's important when you think about ideas this way is that when ideas take form in this hunch state, they need to collide with other hunches. Oftentimes, the thing that turns a hunch into a real breakthrough is another hunch that's lurking in somebody else's mind. And you have to figure out a way to create systems that allow those hunches to come together and turn into something bigger than the sum of their parts. That's why, for instance, the coffee house in the Age of the Enlightenment, or the Parisian salons of modernism, were such engines of creativity, because they created a space where ideas could mingle and swap and create new forms. When you look at the problem of innovation from this perspective, it sheds a lot of important light on the debate we've been having recently about what the internet is doing to our brains. Are we getting overwhelmed with an always connected, multitasking lifestyle? And is that going to lead to less sophisticated thoughts as we move away from the slower, deeper, contemplative state of reading, for instance? Obviously, I'm a big fan of reading. But I think it's important to remember that the great driver of scientific innovation and technological innovation has been the historic increase in connectivity and our ability to reach out and exchange ideas with other people, and to borrow other people's hunches and combine them with our hunches and turn them into something new. That really has, I think, been, more than anything else, the primary engine of creativity and innovation over the last 600 or 700 years. And so yes, it's true we're more distracted. But what has happened that is really miraculous and marvelous over the last 15 years is that we have so many new ways to connect and so many new ways to reach out and find other people who have that missing piece that will complete the idea we're working on, or to stumble serendipitously across some amazing new piece of information that we can use to build and improve our own ideas. That's the real lesson of where good ideas come from, that chance favors the connected mind.